What if the place meant for love becomes the place where you're humiliated the most? What if, in a sea of blessings, a mother and her child were treated like a curse until a stranger shattered the silence? Subscribe to our channel because we are building a community where kindness is our most cherished and honored words. The bells of the cathedral rang in harmony, echoing through the sky like heaven itself was applauding. Inside, the stained glass windows transformed golden sunlight into a waterfall of color, blues like ocean waves, reds like rose petals, gold like promises kept. The altar sparkled beneath a rain of flower petals and light. Every pew was filled with guests in tailored suits and designer dresses, their expressions calm, almost reverent. It was the kind of wedding that made even time slow down to watch. At the center of it all, the bride moved like royalty. Her gown wasn't just white, it was moonlight sewn with lace and dreams. A diamond veil trailed behind her like a cloud, and the train flowed longer than a fairy tale. The music swelled. The crowd collectively held its breath. This moment was perfect. Too perfect. At the very back of the cathedral, tucked away behind a sea of fine fabric and perfume, sat a woman and her daughter, silent, unnoticed, and trying not to be seen. Her name was Janelle, and beside her sat her 6-year-old daughter, Maya, eyes round as lanterns, lips parted in awe. They sat on the last wooden bench, the one that creaked when you moved, far from flowers, far from smiles. Janelle wore a navy blue dress, faded and soft at the edges. Her hair was neatly tied into a low bun, but the scarf she'd used had a tear stitched up with thread that didn't match. Maya's second-hand white dress was too loose at the shoulders and stained at the hem, but she didn't care. She only saw magic. "Look, Mommy," Maya whispered, her voice a secret between two hearts. "She looks like a princess, like the ones in the movies." Janelle smiled gently, one hand brushing her daughter's curls. But behind her smile was something else, something quiet and bruised. "Yes, baby," she said. "She really does." Maya leaned in, eyes wide, whispering like she didn't want the moment to end. Do you think I'll get to wear a dress like that someday? With lights and petals and everyone smiling?" Janelle looked away for a second, so Maya wouldn't see the glassy shimmer in her eyes. "Someday, if you want it," she whispered, "and you'll look even more beautiful than her." They watched in silence as the vows began, the priest's voice echoing softly under the arches, binding two lives with solemn words. The couple exchanged rings, kissed, and the guests erupted into polite applause. The bride laughed, light and pure, and the groom pulled her close like something precious. Janelle didn't move. She held Maya's hand a little tighter. The crowd began to shift, rising in waves, moving toward the exit like a tide of silk and cologne. Janelle hesitated, then slowly rose to her feet. "Come," she said softly to Maya. "Let's just take one picture up there. Just one, to remember we were part of something beautiful." Maya lit up. "Really?" Janelle nodded. "Just a quick one, baby. Then we go." And so, hand in hand, they tiptoed down the aisle, two shadows behind the sparkle, walking a path no one saved for them. What if the one moment you wanted to feel special became the moment the world reminded you didn't belong? They reached the front of the cathedral slowly, careful not to disturb the final petals still drifting to the marble floor. Maya's shoes made soft squeaks on the tile. Her eyes were locked on the altar like it was a gateway to something enchanted. The air still smelled of roses and designer perfume. Janelle knelt beside her daughter, lifting her aging phone. The screen cracked at the corner, but still working. "Okay, baby, smile. Just one for us." Maya beamed. Her small teeth peeked out, eyes lit like birthday candles. Click. "Wait," Janelle whispered. "Let's take one more. You look so happy." She raised the phone again, but before her thumb could press down, a voice shattered the stillness. "Excuse me," it snapped, sharp as glass. "Just what do you think you're doing?" Janelle's fingers froze mid-air. Her chest tightened as if someone had squeezed the breath right out of it. Slowly, she turned. Standing a few pews back was a tall woman with bone straight hair cascading over the shoulders of a rich emerald gown. A diamond necklace hugged her collarbone like frost, and her heels echoed like threats on the marble. Her eyes narrowed as she took in Janelle and Maya like a smudge on fine silk. She was the bride's older sister, Vanessa Langdon, wealthy, vicious, and known in social circles for leaving emotional bruises as easily as breathing. I'm sorry, Janelle stammered, lowering the phone. We weren't trying to crash the ceremony, Vanessa interrupted, stepping forward. Because that's exactly what it looks like. She gave a mocking laugh, one that didn't reach her eyes. This isn't some open-door charity event. Who even let you in? Who told you this was okay? Maya instinctively stepped behind her mother, her small hand clutching Janelle's fingers. Vanessa's gaze dropped, zeroing in on the little girl. And you do not think that wearing a white dress makes you part of this story. You don't belong here. Janelle swallowed hard. Please. She just wanted to see. Vanessa's face twisted. Oh, spare me the sob story. A single mother dragging her illegitimate child into a sacred space, do you honestly think playing pretend makes you one of us? The words fell like stones, every one louder than the last. Maya flinched. Her hand trembled in Janelle's. She looked up, her voice barely audible. Mommy, are we bad? Janelle couldn't answer. Her throat was too tight. Her heart was breaking in real time, and all she could do was hold on. She bent down, whispering, You did nothing wrong, baby. Nothing. But her voice was trembling. Vanessa stepped even closer, arms folded. Let me be very clear. This is not a shelter. This is not a photo booth for people playing dress up. This is a real wedding for real families. Now leave, before you bring misfortune to the bride. Maya began to cry, silent sobs shaking her shoulders, and Janelle stood frozen, unable to defend herself, not because she agreed, but because she was used to this, used to being invisible, used to being tolerated but never embraced, used to people like Vanessa deciding where the lines were and who was allowed to step over them. But just when she thought she'd crumble under the weight of humiliation, another voice entered the room, a man's voice, low, clear, and calm in a way that turned the air electric. Enough? Sometimes, all it takes is one voice to shift the weight of a room, and one heart to rewrite someone's story. The echo of that single word, enough, rolled across the marble floor, like thunder after lightning. It didn't shout. It didn't need to. It simply cut through the cruelty like a blade through silk. Everyone turned. A man stepped from the far left aisle, where the shadows met the golden light spilling through the stained glass. He was tall, commanding, dressed in a fitted charcoal suit that looked tailored straight from a Milan way. His dark hair was slightly tousled, as if he'd just run a hand through it out of frustration or grief. But it was his eyes that held the room, piercing, steady, unapologetic. He didn't look at the crowd. He didn't even glance at the bride. His focus was locked solely on Janelle and her daughter. Janelle blinked, unsure if she was dreaming. Maya's crying slowed, curiosity flickering behind her tears. The man walked with purpose, each step measured but resolute. Whispers broke out among the guests. Is that? No, it can't be. Oh my God, it is. Alexander Halle, CEO of Halle Global, one of the most influential minds in philanthropic investment. A man who'd been named Forbes' youngest billionaire 3 years in a row. He rarely attended social functions, and when he did, it was with the type of quiet gravitas that made headlines. Vanessa's smirk wavered. Alexander? She said, trying to recover her edge. What are you? He raised a hand. She stopped speaking. He turned his head, slowly, toward her. Who told you she didn't have a husband? Vanessa flinched. What? He turned to the congregation. Who said this woman was alone? Silence. He stepped beside Janelle and Maya, placing his body between them and Vanessa, like a wall shielding them from a storm. No one? He asked, his tone quiet, but slicing. Then let me correct the narrative. He looked down at Janelle. She looked up at him, confused, breathless. From this moment on, he said loud enough for everyone to hear, Janelle and her daughter are with me. Gasps rippled like a wave through the pews. Phones slipped from hands. One guest's wine glass tipped and shattered. Vanessa paled. You're joking. Alexander didn't blink. Instead, he shrugged off his jacket and placed it over Janelle's shaking shoulders with surprising gentleness. like he'd done it 1,000 times. Then he knelt before Maya. "You dropped something," he said, pulling a soft white handkerchief from his pocket and gently wiping her tears. "But don't worry. It's not your fault." She sniffled. "She said I don't belong." He met her eyes. "That's not true. Not for a second." He smiled softly. "You're just braver than anyone else in this room." Mia's little fingers clung to the handkerchief. He rose, lifted her into his arms as if it were the most natural thing in the world. She didn't resist. And for the first time in a very long while, Janelle exhaled. When dignity is stripped in front of a crowd, it takes one act of courage to restore what cruelty tried to erase. The church, just moments ago buzzing with murmurs and laughter, had been reduced to stunned silence. All eyes were glued to the center aisle, not to the couple at the altar, not to the stained glass saints, but to them. Alexander Hall stood tall with Maya in his arms, her head now resting quietly against his shoulder. His presence didn't just fill the room, it rearranged it. The atmosphere had shifted entirely. Something sacred was unfolding. Vanessa's mouth opened, but no words came. The smugness on her face had been replaced by confusion and disbelief. She looked to the groom, to the bride, to the guests searching for someone, anyone to back her up. But no one did. Alexander's voice cut through again, low and even. "This child has done nothing wrong. She came here with wonder in her heart, not mischief. But what did we give her?" He scanned the pews. "Humiliation, judgment." Janelle, still trembling, managed a whisper. "Why are you doing this?" Alexander looked down at her. "Because someone should have spoken up sooner." He turned to face Vanessa directly. "And as for you," he said calmly, "it's one thing to protect your sister's wedding. It's another to poison it with cruelty. Today was supposed to be about love. What part of what you just did reflects that?" Vanessa bristled. "You don't know her. You don't know them." He took a step closer. "Maybe not. But I know pain when I see it. And I know when a child is being taught to feel small in a place meant to lift her up." Maya lifted her head slowly, eyes wide. "Are we bad people?" she asked again, quieter this time. Alexander softened, his expression melting. "No, little one. Not even close." He looked over the crowd, his voice now solemn but powerful. "If anyone here believes this child doesn't belong, speak now. If anyone believes compassion has an expiration date, say so." Not a single person moved. Not even the bride. Janelle stood straighter. The jacket around her shoulders felt like armor. Maya clung to Alexander, calmer now, her sobs quieting to soft breaths. And then, for the first time since she entered that cathedral, Janelle no longer felt invisible. Alexander turned toward the door, his hand resting gently on Janelle's back. "Let's go," he said. And they began walking past the staring eyes, the shocked whispers, the towering altar that had once felt untouchable. But now Janelle didn't feel unworthy. She didn't feel ashamed, because someone had stood for her, and that changed everything. Sometimes the greatest miracles come not with trumpets or thunder, but with a borrowed jacket, a kind hand, and a silence that heals. Outside the grand cathedral, the sun had dipped low, casting long shadows across the gravel parking lot. The gold-stitched jacket Alexander had draped around Janelle's shoulders felt impossibly warm, like she'd been carrying a chill for years and only now realized it. Maya stood beside her, quiet now, clutching her mother's hand like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. For once, it didn't matter that their shoes were worn, or that Maya's dress had been bought from a donation bin. It didn't matter that they'd come with nothing but a dream and a phone camera. Alexander stood a few feet away, his arms folded loosely as he watched them, not like a man who pitied them, but like someone who had seen them, all of them. Janelle turned toward him, her voice low and raw. "Why did you do that?" He didn't hesitate. "Because I couldn't not." She frowned. "You don't even know us." "No," he said softly, "but I know what it feels like to be made small by people who think their titles or clothes give them power. And I know what it looks like when a child is being taught to carry shame. That doesn't belong to her." Maya looked up. "Are we going to get in trouble?" Alexander knelt beside her again, his voice a whisper. "You did nothing wrong, Maya. You walked into a place meant for celebration, and someone tried to turn that joy into pain. That's not your fault. That's theirs." Janelle's throat tightened. "You talk like you've seen this before." He smiled faintly, almost sadly. I've lived it. Different faces. Same cruelty. A moment passed, the air full of things they weren't saying. Then Alexander reached into his jacket, his other jacket, and pulled out a small, embossed card. My company hosts several charity events each season. Galas, fundraisers, art auctions. We're always short-staffed with people who know how to lead with grace. He extended the card toward her. If you're ever looking for something more permanent, something that lets you work with dignity, I think we could use someone like you. Janelle took the card slowly. Is this pity? Alexander shook his head. It's a door. You can walk through it or not. Either way, I just wanted to say, I see you. She looked down at the card. Silver ink shimmered on the surface. Alexander Howe, Halle Foundation. He started walking back toward a sleek black car waiting nearby. But just before the door opened, he paused and turned. I'm not trying to save you, he said gently. You've been doing that just fine on your own. Then he slipped into the back seat and disappeared behind the tinted window. Janelle stood there long after he left, the card clutched in her hand, her daughter still by her side, the borrowed jacket wrapped tight around her frame like a promise too fragile to say aloud. Sometimes the weight of a simple business card carries more hope than a lifetime of empty promises. That night, their apartment was colder than usual, not from the air, but from the echo of something, impossible something Janelle hadn't dared feel in years. The jacket still clung to her shoulders like a second skin. She hadn't taken it off since they returned home. It smelled faintly of expensive cologne and something else she couldn't quite place security. Maya, now in her mismatched pajamas, sat cross-legged on their worn couch, dipping a spoon into peanut butter straight from the jar. The flickering light bulb above them buzzed with each flicker, casting the room in shaky shadows. "Mommy?" she asked between bites. "Is that man your friend now?" Janelle smiled faintly, brushing a curl away from Maya's forehead. "I don't know, baby. Maybe. He was just kind." Maya tilted her head, thinking. "He looked like the man I drew. Remember? The one who reads bedtime stories and brings flowers?" Janelle blinked. She did remember. Maya had drawn that picture just a few days ago, stick figures with uneven lines, big hearts, and a man taller than the others holding flowers in one hand and a book in the other. Curious, Janelle reached into her handbag to pull it out again. She had tucked the drawing in there to keep it safe. But as her fingers searched, her heart began to pound. The folder was still there, but the paper wasn't. She flipped it open, panicked, then paused. Tucked inside the silk lining of the jacket Alexander had placed over her was the drawing. She held it gently, unfolding the creased edges. The lines were unmistakable. Maya had drawn the tall man with kind eyes, and now that Janelle stared at it again, the man in the drawing was Alexander. A tremor passed through her. He hadn't just returned the drawing. He'd seen it fall, picked it up, tucked it away in his own coat, returned it without saying a word. That meant he had paid attention to something most people would have stepped on or forgotten. Janelle looked over at Maya, who had now curled against a pillow, eyelids drooping. "Do you think he'll come back?" Maya asked sleepily. "I don't know," Janelle said honestly. "But I think maybe we don't have to hide anymore." She stared at Alexander's business card on the table. His name etched in silver felt like a lifeline, an invitation to breathe differently. Later, once Maya was fully asleep, Janelle tiptoed into the next room, her hands shaking slightly as she picked up the card. She sat on the edge of her bed, surrounded by overdue bills, a broken lamp, and one bold possibility. She picked up her phone, took a breath, then dialed the number. The line barely rang once before a deep, calm voice answered. "Halle speaking." Janelle cleared her throat. "It's me. From the church, Janelle." There was a pause, then warmth bloomed in his tone. "I remember. You mentioned a job," she said. "I don't want anything for free, but I could use a real chance." "You're right on time," Alexander replied. "There's a fundraiser this weekend at my home in Hudson Valley. I need someone who knows how to handle pressure and carry herself with dignity." "That sound like you?" Janelle smiled faintly, the first smile not born from obligation in months. "Can I bring my daughter?" Alexander's voice soft. "I was hoping you would. Healing doesn't always knock it sometimes. Arrives in the form of an unexpected invitation, and the sound of your child calling a stranger." home. 3 days later, the car arrived just after sunrise. It wasn't flashy. A sleek, quiet sedan with tinted windows and a driver in a black cap who held the door without a word. Janelle hesitated at the threshold of their apartment. The morning air was sharp with wind, tugging at Maya's little coat. "You sure about this, Mommy?" Maya asked, clutching her small pink backpack, the one with only one working zipper. Janelle gave her a brave smile, but inside her heart was sprinting. "I'm sure we'll be okay." As the car pulled out of their weather-worn neighborhood, Janelle looked out the window at cracked sidewalks, faded storefronts, and the ghosts of all the almosts she had lived through. Maya chattered in the back seat about the clouds, the trees, and how tall Mr. Holly was. "Do you think he has chocolate at his house?" "I don't know, baby." Janelle chuckled. "Maybe he has carrot sticks." Maya made a face. "Ooh, but I think he doesn't like carrots either." It was such a small thing, yet the memory stung in a gentle way. Maya had noticed just like she had noticed his kindness. When they arrived at the Holly estate in Hudson Valley, it didn't look like anything Janelle had imagined. There was no grand fountain or army of staff waiting, just sunlight spilling over a brick walkway, wind chimes dancing softly on a veranda, and a wide garden with flowers already in bloom. Maya gasped as she stepped out of the car. "Mommy? It's like a fairy tale." Janelle tried to reply, but her throat closed up. For so long, all she'd known were gray days, minimum wage, and second-hand hope. Now here was a place that smelled like possibility. The door opened. Alexander stood at the top of the steps, hands in his pockets, shirt sleeves casually rolled to his elbows. He didn't wear power like armor here. He wore it like gentleness. "Welcome," he said. Maya was already halfway up the steps before Janelle could stop her. "Mr. Holly, you remembered us,"